Blood is thicker than water is a phrase that defines this story, but not in its commonly known meaning, which stands for family is the most important. Instead, it is defined by the original unedited version of this phrase, which is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, meaning the complete opposite thing, which is that the bonds that you've made by choice are more important than the bonds you get compulsorily. It is easy to assume that when looking at the tags of this anime, it is just another, slice of life romance targeted more towards girls. And in fact, there is a lot of people that are looking at it this way and are just going to think that. But by doing so, you will completely miss the point of Fruits Basket, which is right there in plain sight. But even in regard to its most basic part, the romance of this anime is more than good. It does start off like a basic slice of life with slight romantic hints between multiple characters, but the fact that through all of the 63 episodes, we see the romantic spotlight of characters like Yuki and Momiji shift, breathe, and really work like a real-life situation, with all the headaches and the ups and downs, eventually shows us that the writer, Natsuki Takaya, is more than capable of delivering not just a well-written but also realistic and interesting romance at the same time. Of course, this is a rather layered show and it only uses romance to push forward its point, and for that reason it would be kind of stupid if it only had the romance going on for it just with the main characters. Instead, we have the other relationships between characters like Hatsuharu and Isuzu, for example, and all of it is spiced up with the addition of characters like Shigure, Kagura, Kureno, and the villain themselves, Akito, to create this huge, complex web of interconnected character relationships. Now, it may be easy to suppose that the romance aspect is built just upon the good looks of the characters, but in fact, it's wrong, and it brings me to the point of why this anime shines. Bonds are the primary driving force of this anime, and I haven't seen an anime or a show in general talk this well about these many types of bonds, as well as the nature and philosophy of them. By philosophy, I mean the many times the show talks about what a proper relationship is, and we have the main talking points presented as the relationship between Tohru and her mom, Tohru and her friends, and on the opposite side we have Akito with his mom and Akito with his friends. We get to see Tohru bound to her late mother's love as she makes new friends that she loves and that love her back for the entire length of the anime. And it's really well presented with the story of the most foolish traveler in the world and connecting it to Tohru, letting us see that she just loves, and that even if she dies for that love, she would die happily. And on the other side, we see Akito, who is desperately trying to cling on to his fate-given right, and combined with his competition with his mother for the late father's love, here we truly see the clash of the two meanings of the phrase that I mentioned at the start, and the abstract battle of which one shall prevail. Now, these bonds that Akito has are presented through the story of the Chinese zodiac, and Akito is the god of the banquet in this case, and the animals in this case are the other members of the Soma family, who are meant to keep him happy for all eternity. But they themselves, the other members, see this as more of a curse. Here we can see the symbolism of these bonds that relate to like real life bonds, in fact, like a parent-child bond, which is naturally supposed to mean that you are close, but we all know that in reality that bond doesn't really mean anything and is just superficial. This of course is reflected in the show as well. Akito might have this superficial fake bond, but Tohru and her mother have a really close bond with each other. The show is trying to tell us that just because we were born bound to one another doesn't mean that that bond is strong or valuable at all. It tells us that it is not enough to be a mother or a brother, but that you also have to be a friend. You can't just expect to be close to someone because you have a blood bond. You also have to choose that bond, and you have to take care of it and cherish it, work for it and earn it. Now, of course, the show isn't that black and white. It shows us the whole spectrum of family relationships. And it is in fact when I came across this point that I wanted to further watch this anime, and I started digging for a deeper meaning. At the very beginning of the show, we see a rather basic setup with a small twist. The Somas have a curse that makes them turn into animals when they hug the opposite gender. I didn't think more of it than a small spice to a slice of life series, but I couldn't have imagined what kind of implications this carried. Imagine just how in real life a mother would react when she holds her newborn baby boy for the first time and the child turns into a rabbit. This is the story of Momiji. His mother tried to bear it, but eventually couldn't anymore, and her memories of her child had to be erased for the sake of her sanity. Of course, you can imagine that you knowing your mother for the past 15 years and then your mother completely forgetting about your existence is a very heavy burden to bear. And this is just one of several character stories in this anime that serves as a reminder that sometimes people actually want these wholesome family bonds, but unfortunately due to some curse, it is impossible to carry on a healthy relationship. You can also watch the first season of this anime up until episode 7 to see one of the fantastic character stories with Hattori. This one being the reason why I even decided to further watch the show. But as I said, these stories aren't black and white, and we have plenty of other more down-to-earth stories of toxic and even healing family relationships with characters like Arisa and her father. And I could go on and on about the depth and connectivity of all of these as it brings us to the final season of the show where everything finally comes together. One way that I could describe the events of this show is if you were to take Attack on Titan Season 3 Part 2, which is by many regards a fantastic show, and take all of the amazing and thrilling acts and events that happened within that season and turn it into a drama style. Without the action, but with so many dramatic twists and happenings that it's suffice to say that you could basically get goosebumps every 6 minutes for at least half of the season. To call the complexity of the drama that unfolds within the last season good is an understatement, because imagine getting close to so many interconnected characters and their relationships for the past 50 episodes with all their good and bad parts and rooting for your favorite characters, only to see them in this final clash where they all come together. The facade starts breaking down and the characters get into this amazing confrontation, the thrill of which you can't experience in many other anime. And I would love to talk about every single intricate detail that happens within those, but neither do we have time, nor do I wish to accidentally spoil this masterpiece of a drama to someone who might be willing to get into it. Now, I do have some criticisms when it comes to this show. For example, how the epilogue of the show took 2 entire episodes to carry on, which isn't necessarily a bad thing since, some people would love to see some of these characters finalize their actions and finish all of the loose ends that were happening. So it isn't much of a big deal, but one actual criticism that I may leave is that the character designs are kind of wacky. I mean, they do fit the 90s style of when the manga was created, and they did try to update the art, but unfortunately it didn't really age well at all. Especially since the studio decided they weren't gonna redesign the original characters that the original author made, which in their own right weren't necessarily good for their own time either. Now, to end on a higher note, I would just like to say that this is one of the few animes that I would give a 10 out of 10 to. That score is, as objective as I can be, and I don't believe in true objectivity, as I think that, it's inevitably going to come from some sort of perspective. Either way, in my humble opinion, this is truly one of the best shows out there, and especially one of the best romance or dramas in the medium. And if you haven't already seen the show, I highly encourage you to watch it. And I promise you won't be disappointed. Now, if you disagree with me in any regard, or if you just want to keep the conversation going, feel free to do so down in the comments below. As you know, I do read them all, and also don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this in the future. Yeah, I would really appreciate that, but for now, this has been Mangosh. Thank you so much for watching, and see you all next time.